Channel Sports Central will be over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be for the Illinois Fighting Illini, a team that was 2-6 overall in the 2020 season. And this was a team that struggled last season, to say the least, as they were once again 2-6 overall. Lovie Smith, of course, was fired as head coach, and he is no longer with Illinois. So now it's Bret Bielema coming in. He's the new head coach for Illinois, and whether or not he will be able to lead Illinois to a winning season in 2021 is what we'll be going over here today. We're going to start with Illinois' final prediction. We'll be looking at your season trends to get things started here today. Once again, this team was 2-6 overall in the 2020 season, and they were 1-3 in their first 4 games, and then 1-3 in their last 4. So this team was pretty consistent with how they were last season. They won against Rutgers 23-20. Also had a huge win over Nebraska, 41-23 as well. On November 21st. So that was obviously the signature win of the season last year for Illinois, was against Nebraska, beating the Huskers by 18 in that matchup. So great win there. They lost to Iowa by 14, 21-35, and they also got blown out to Penn State, unfortunately, for them, 21-56. So kind of an up and down season for Illinois, and that's kind of been kind of the theme for this team over the past few years, as they've just been so inconsistent, and it's just been a tough time for Illinois football. But this is a team that, there's some optimism here. Of course, they got Bret Bielema coming in. He's been all over the place, from Wisconsin to Arkansas to now Illinois. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does with Illinois. But this is a team that, looking at your returning production, things look pretty good for this team. I like how this team looks in the talent category. Of course, you got Brandon Peters coming back. He's a pretty experienced quarterback now. Of course, last season he put up 420 yards, 3 touchdowns. Didn't throw an interception last season, which is good, but his completion rate was horrendous at 48%, and that's definitely got to be improved going into next season. He didn't even complete half of his passes last year, so he's got to improve that a lot going into next season if this is going to be a good football team. If you can get that up to 60%, even that would make a huge difference. But Brandon Peters does have experience. That's the one thing that he's got going for him, is he's a very experienced quarterback in the Big Ten now. He's been around for a while. Artur Sitkowski is coming in from Rutgers. He is not as, I don't think that he'll do as good of a job as if they had Brandon Peters starting out at the quarterback position. Artur Sitkowski was a decent quarterback at Rutgers, but he wasn't a good quarterback. He was a kind of a half and half starter last season. He played a little bit, but he was not the primary starter for the majority of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team handles him. I do think he'll probably get some playing time next season, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot out of Artur Sitkowski. As for the running back core, Chase Brown's coming back. Mike Epstein is also coming back. So you got 2 of your top running backs coming back for next season. Chase Brown especially had a big impact on this team last year, putting up 600 yards, and Mike Epstein was right around 400 yards. So overall, it looks pretty good for this team going into next season in the backfield. That's definitely the one main position where there's some pretty good talent on this Illinois offense. As for the receiving core, Josh Imatorbhebhe, that's going to be a tough loss there. He was your top receiver. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, by the way, but he did put up 300 yards, 3 touchdowns last season, so that'll be a tough loss there. Daniel Barker and Brian Hightower are both coming back, so you got 2 of your top receivers there. Daniel Barker, of course, last season put up 260 yards. Brian Hightower not far behind with 210 yards. So you got 2 receivers coming back there. Your tight ends is going to have a huge impact on this team for sure. But overall, a big factor in how this team is going to be next season is going to stem around the quarterback position and how healthy this team is. If this team does end up getting beat up, and that's going to be some bad news for this team. But, if Brandon Peters plays well and he improves going into next season, which is definitely possible, this team could be in contention for a bowl game. That's going to be the main goal for this team for sure, is getting up to 6 wins. If you can do that, that'd be a great season for this team. Being able to get into a bowl game would be a big deal for Illinois right now, which is, this team is just in a tough situation right now, flipping on and off between coaches. And, of course, you got Bret Bielema coming in now. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he does in Illinois. He's had some good success with teams in the past. So it'll be interesting to see, once again, how he does with Illinois. But chances of a bowl season, I'd say this team is less likely than if they were get to a bowl game. I think the chances are pretty slim for this team to get to a bowl game. I think it's possible. It's not impossible, but this team, just looking at this team in general, just off of their 2-6 season last year, and with a new head coach coming in, it could be a tougher year for Illinois. But looking at your schedule going into next season. You start off the year on August 28th, actually, in week 0 against Nebraska at home. That game was supposed to be in Ireland, but of course it was moved due to COVID concerns. So it's going to be against Nebraska. So you got a conference matchup, interesting conference matchup. Illinois actually had some pretty good success against Nebraska last year, so should be an interesting one there. Then you got UTSA on September 4th. Virginia is going to follow that. Then you got Maryland at home, then Purdue on the road on the 25th. So your bye week does not come until mid-October, which is a pretty good time to have a bye week in the middle of the season there. So that's good news. They do play Penn State on the road on the 23rd. You got Rutgers at home on the 30th. And then in November, you got also another bye week on the 13th of November. Obviously, considering you're playing in week 0, that's the reason why you got 2 bye weeks next year. We got Minnesota on the road, Iowa on the road, then Northwestern at home to finish out the season. So once again, I mean, you don't have a terrible schedule. Your difficulty is not terrible. I mean, you get to play Rutgers, which is one of the worst teams in the conference. Then you got, of course, Penn State. Could be a tough one there, but Maryland is not a very good team as well. So you've probably got one of the easier schedules in the Big Ten going into next season. So the schedule is not a concern for this team. I mean, you got Virginia on the road in one of your non-conference games, but that's not too much of a concern for me. So looking at your August into September, your first 5 games, I could go 2-3 here. I think Nebraska could be a close one there, considering Illinois has always played Nebraska, or has played Nebraska pretty close in the past few years. But I think Nebraska does pull it out in the end in week 0. UTSA, easy win there. That's a pretty terrible. Well, actually, UTSA was a decent team last season, so it could be a closer one. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. I'm giving it to Illinois there. I think this team being at home should get the win against UTSA. Virginia on the road, I'm going bold with that decision there. I think Illinois goes into Virginia and gets the win against a pretty good Cavalier team. But then again, Virginia is a pretty young team right now as well, so that could easily go either way. I think it's going to be a close one, but Illinois gets the win. Maryland, Purdue, both losses. I could see those games. I mean, both of those games are definitely winnable ones. Maryland being at home and then Purdue on the road. I could see Illinois winning both of those games, but I'm going to give it to Maryland and Purdue to win both of those matchups. So 2-3 is going to be a record heading into October. Not a bad situation. I mean, if you think about it, this team still, I mean, you got to win 4 of your last 7 games in order to get to a bowl game at this point. But, I mean, you can definitely get up to 5 wins, which would still also be a pretty good season considering this team was just 2-6 in the 2020 season. But looking at Charlotte there, that's going to be an easy win. Charlotte's, I mean, they're an okay team. I think Illinois is a better team for sure, though. So I'm going to give it to Illinois there. Wisconsin, Penn State, Rutgers, all 3 of those games could come to be tougher ones. Rutgers is winnable. That's at home for Illinois, and I went back and forth on that one quite a bit, but I'm going to give it to Rutgers. Rutgers actually was a decent team last season. I think they were 3-6 overall, which was a good season for them. I mean, to get 3 conference wins last year, which Rutgers was a team that has had a very tough time in the past few years of even getting conference wins. So who knows? They could be a decent team next season. I like Noah Vedral quite a bit as well, but Wisconsin, Penn State, both are going to be losses there. So I think you go 3-6 heading into November. And at this point, you got to win all 3 of your last games to make it to a bowl game. That's not going to happen, but I think this team does get a huge win against Northwestern in the final game of the season. So you'll finish out the season with a 4-8 record. Northwestern is a very polarizing team for me. I just don't. I mean, there are some analysts that have Northwestern going up to 8 wins or 7 to 8 wins, but Northwestern next season, they're not going to be a good team. I'm just going to tell you right now, that team is losing so much. They've got a ton of players transferring away from that program. Something interesting right now is going on in Northwestern, and it's not the best situation right now there. But of course, if you look at them last season, won the Big Ten West. So you do have a promising 2020 season behind you, but I don't expect much out of them at all. So 4-8 is going to be a record for next season. So not a bad season if this team can get up to 4 wins. Once again, it's going to be a big rebuilding year for Illinois as you've got a new head coach and also somewhat of a young team. So let me know your thoughts and comments below on Illinois. I do appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys later.